Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, of a very special guest, returning guest, comes to us from Australia. He's been on, this will be our seventh show. I figured that out. His name is J.J. Dawson. You're watching this on my three newly returned, well, in the last 2 or 3 months, YouTube channels, or X, or Rockfin, or Rumble. You'll see his Substack. And I reached out to him. I mean, he's a great guest. I really can't. He came to my attention during all the COVID situation because I was reading his stuff. I just kept coming across his writings about COVID, and so we did shows on that. And then I reached out to him. I saw Anarchy, which is, I think, more voluntarism, whatever you want to call it. I think it's an important topic with so much issues between just humanity and the state and their governments these days. And it's super national. It happens in all these different nations. Well, in the interim, there was a huge event in Bondi Beach in Australia. So you can see this guy, Anmore, I think was his name or something like that. He supposedly killed 15 people at a Hanukkah party, I think, or he can talk more about that. Some of the other shows, people go through the archives and check out the other shows I've done with JJ. I think they're very important. Like another one that he wrote about, which is a great article, which you can check out on Subject, is the trans issue is not a petty culture war clash. It is everything. He was right. He is right. That's back from 2023. We also talked about Andrew Tate. I titled that one Andrew Tate and the Temptation of Man, which I think is important because it's like how men get tempted by, power over woman and bling and cars and stuff like that. I think our first one was the COVID Nightmare Down Under, which I titled that. And then we did another one, Your Country Needs You to Die in a Cold, Barren Trench in Ukraine. And then Nobody is Coming to Save You. That was 2023. And then we also talked about Environmental, Social, and Governance. It's WEF, Economic Infiltration, which it was. But like I said, I've titled this one is Anarchy, Chaos. But we're going to kind of bounce around because so much has happened in the time that we scheduled this this discussion and today's date, which is December 18th, 2025. So, J.J. Dawson, welcome back to the show.
Hi, William. It's great to be back.
Excellent.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been too long. I'm sorry that I haven't followed up, but sometimes just I'm on the old, hamster wheel and running around. But I'm great. It's great to have you back. For people who hadn't heard our shows, or maybe you're writing, maybe you can talk about your background, how you got into writing on your Substack, and then everything that's led up to kind of your research into the subject of anarchy, which, the kind of newer word that has less negative connotation maybe is voluntarism, and then what happened in Bondi Beach. So, yeah, just take it from here.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the first, one of the first episodes we did, the COVID Nightmare Down Under. It's a good segue into what we're going to talk about today because the nightmare hasn't ended. And it relates also to the topic that you originally reached out to me on for today's discussion, which is the whole anarchy thing. Anarchy isn't chaos. But the Australian government is, despite what some might think when they look at Australia, as a land of sunshine and surf and easygoing people, it is one of the most authoritarian governments in the world. And we experienced that during COVID. And we discussed that on what I thought was one of our best episodes, the COVID Nightmare Down Under. But obviously, like so many others in this space, it was that COVID period that got me into writing. And, it's led me down the rabbit hole that so many of us have gone down to. It's returned me to my Christian faith because I discovered fairly early on in the COVID saga that, I realized that, we were beset by such abject evil from all our earthly rulers that, it just clicked for me. It was like, well, there is no legitimacy in any of these rulers, and there can ultimately never be any legitimacy in earthly rulers. And we can get scriptural on that whole thing, and we can talk about Romans 13 if you want. But and anyway, so that was sort of my moment where I was like, there's got to be something greater. It has to be God. So that's taken me down this path here, and basically it's what underpins this recent essay, Anarchy Isn't Chaos, the big lie that keeps the state in power. So, but that also bleeds into what's been happening this past week and the expansion of state power that we're currently seeing in Australia following the Bondi shooting.
Right. I mean, it's an incredible. There's a lot. The video that we get in the States seems real. So it seems like there really were people dying. But I saw like one guy who was supposedly at 10-7 was at Bondi Beach. Like, what's the likelihood of that? I don't know if that's true.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you can give your impression on the event.
My personal impression is that it was probably a false flag, but I don't think it matters, because whether it was organic or whether it was a false flag, the result for the state and the establishment is the same, and the result for we the people is the same. So I actually fed this into a sort of a game theory matrix that I've been building on ChatGPT, and it confirmed what I was thinking was that whether or not it was staged by the intelligence agencies, which I think there's a high likelihood because there's heaps about it that doesn't add up, like that guy who was present on October 7th and also at this attack, and the search results of the apparent shooter's name in Tel Aviv and other places the day before the actual attack.
Right, that's like the I don't know if you know that, but that's what happened with the Charlie Kirk thing. Is they were researching Tyler Robinson's name in Tel Aviv 2 months before the event. So sorry.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, from where I'm sitting, I lean into the idea nowadays that everything is fake. I can't step out of that way of thinking after everything we've seen. But I don't know. But I'm perfectly comfortable saying I don't know, because the result's the same either way. The state's going to expand its power, and the people are going to lose more freedom, which is exactly what we're seeing now. The gun control conversation is back on the table. Hate speech laws being discussed. The catalyst by which they implement it is not important, and they're happy to use either one. I mean, we've seen it in the UK. In the UK, that they've got hate speech laws to protect Muslims. Down under, because we don't have such a high Muslim population, presumably, they just flip it the other way. We're going to use hate speech laws to protect the Jews, and none of this, I would point out, would be necessary if we hadn't been subject to multiculturalism, the multicultural experiment, and mass immigration from non-Christian cultures for the past 80 years.
Yeah, and it's happening here too. So you see that similarity. Actually, strangely, the Bondi Beach shooting coincides with the topic or subject matter of anarchy and state power, because it's going to result in more state power. Like it doesn't fit that there's more. Like you need more censorship after this event. You need more. What you need is better talking, but instead they're going to censor people for saying negative things about Israel or Jews or whatever, right?
Yeah, sure. And it's always what happens, and we see it time and time again. I mean, it's serendipitous actually that this kicked off right after I wrote that essay about anarchy, because what we're seeing now, the reaction of the public and what people decide they're willing to put up with from the government, it speaks directly to that point that so often the solution that people grasp onto is more government. And just to explain the genesis of the essay that we're looking at on screen right now, it came from two conversations that I had with two people close to me. One of them was my son, who's 19 years old, and the other was a friend who's my age. So he's an older millennial. But it sort of crystallized for me what what I have been observing in society at large for years, for decades even, is that people can be awake, as we might say, and cognizant of the fact that the government causes all these problems, but so often their solution to these government-caused problems is more government, or better government, or different government, and the maxim that they fall back on is that without government we would have anarchy. Anarchy's become such a dirty word. It's used to instill fear, and even myself now, knowing what anarchy truly means, which is just the absence of rulers, the word itself still has a scary kind of sound to it, and so the conversation goes, well, we've got to have government. Without it, we'd have chaos. And it's actually something my son said to me, because one of his roommates is a self-described anarchist, and he was telling me about this, and he said, I can sort of see where he's coming from, but we've got to have government. We've got to have checks and balances. And he started reeling off all these kind of catchphrases that he's heard come through the culture in his lifetime, which is not an incredibly long time, but he's already soaked it all up. And so the context of this is, in New Zealand, of course, the white guilt thing is just rampant. And like many teenagers, he was kind of nominally on the left wing for the last few years, but the white guilt thing has started to grate on him so much that he informs me, he's moving away from left wing politics, and I'm like, okay, well, that's great, but his solution was to reject anarchy and to lean back into the idea that we needed a human government to solve these problems, even though it's a human government which has created this narrative of white guilt in the first place. And my friend, who I mentioned, his situation is slightly different. The context is different, but again, he leans into the same fallacy and the same kind of doublethink. So he was politically activated after being fairly apolitical for most of his life by the Gaza, the Israel-Gaza thing, and he's outraged at what's going on over there, and feels that the USA has grossly abused its position as world policeman, and we need a new order, and the white Western imperialists must fall, and it's time for the BRICS nations to take over and go China, basically. And I tried to explain to him that, okay, I'm not a fan of the liberal world order, the US-led liberal world order either, but changing it out for China ain't going to fix anything, chap. So again, we see that same fallacy and the same doublethink.
Right. China is actually clamping down on former Hong Kong politicians and democratic ideals. So, be careful, see what happens in Tibet or East Turkestan or whatever. So people wanting this whole BRICS thing. Yeah, be careful. Yeah.
There's so much CCP propaganda floating around that I can see why people are sort of throwing their hands in the air and saying, enough of the US-led world order. Let's have another leader. But again, that's my point. They can't see past this idea that we've got to have a strong centralized state running things to maintain order.
Well, look, you have a strong authoritarian state in Australia, and you still had a shooting that supposedly killed 15 people at one of the nicest, if not the nicest, beachfront property in Australia, right?
That's, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't work. They took your guns away after the Hobart massacre, right? The Port Arthur massacre with Bryant, and you still got a bunch of people shot, supposedly.
Correct. So, I mean, look, yeah, like I said, whether or not, and I agree with you, actually. I think there was so much footage on the ground, even though some of the footage is well, yeah, staged, or like how is this person not running for their life? They're just sort of casually standing there filming a guy who's firing off.
Why aren't the police doing anything? Like, this whole thing has changed.
Yeah, I mean, there's that as well. But it does appear that people were killed. I think just with the number of regular people with smartphones around that particular location last Sunday, it would be hard to stage it with crisis actors. So, but that doesn't mean it wasn't a false flag.
Right, just like 10/7, right? Like, people died on 10/7.
Yeah, sure.
People were taken, like, there's no question. But that doesn't mean it wasn't allowed to happen. Like, they will willingly sacrifice people. Like, I went through 9/11. Like, they will let people die, So.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the big one, It's the big one. And I don't know, people have short memories.
They do. I mean, they don't understand how ruthless these state actors are, the people at power. Like, that's the whole thing, is like, when you centralize or have authoritarian governments, they will do stuff like this. They will deliberately poison you. They will lie to you. They will propagandize you. They will COVID era you, Wow. Like, I'm not surprised. I'm surprised there isn't more conversations about anarchy or voluntarism or, degrading the state, especially in the States. Like, we're basically have an empire that we're kind of like, indentured servants. I mean, they take half of our income here in the United States. We don't get much in return. We just get a bunch of slop propaganda and bad food, bad finances, bad roads. It's not good. Like, I'm surprised there's not more people, revolt. I mean, I don't know if socialism is the answer or something like that, but just people saying enough is enough. Wow.
Well, I don't think socialism is the answer. I mean, socialism again is
state. You're back at the state again, right?
State. Yeah. But I'll tell you why there's not more discussion around anarchy. It's because there's a glass ceiling. People hit a glass ceiling. Like, people understand that there's problems and that this isn't working, and more people are starting to understand that, which is a step in the right direction. There is an awakening going on, but people hit this glass ceiling on their ascent towards radical insight, and that I've realized something interesting, actually, that this glass ceiling, which I'm about to name, actually functions very much like substance addiction, which is something I have some experience with. So I've got some insight here. But the glass ceiling that people hit is that they're unable to see past the institutions of men. They're unable to comprehend that there is a power greater than ourselves from which goodness and decency and righteousness derives. It's not something we created. And given that it's not something that we humans created, it's not something that any human organization can ultimately arbitrate. So obviously what I'm saying is that the answer is God. But what's interesting and why the ceiling exists is that, we've had Christ stripped away from us in the West, and this has been happening for a long time. And I'm sure most people listening understand exactly what I'm talking about, and the process by which this has happened, the tools that they've employed to strip away our religion, one of which is multiculturalism. But I think the glass ceiling exists because secular people, they're avoiding something harder, and this is the pattern that actually looks a lot like addiction. And I finally understood after all these years why it was that I named my Substack Anxiety, Addiction, and Ascension. So, I mean, I've started thinking of secular politics in the way that we think about addiction. So the secular man will try everything to fix his life, new leaders, new systems, new ideologies, except the one thing that actually addresses the problem, which is submitting the inner struggle to something higher than himself. So in that sense, secularism functions like an addiction. It outsources responsibility to an external agent, and it gives temporary relief from anxiety and guarantees long-term damage. So if you look at addiction, it avoids an inner reckoning. Secularism avoids moral authority beyond man. Addiction seeks external fixes. Secularism seeks political saviors. Addiction, temporary relief. Secularism, the election cycle, the hope of every election cycle. Addiction, escalating dependency. Secularism, expanding state power. Addiction, loss of agency. Secularism, loss of freedom. Addiction rationalizes one's behavior, and secularism rationalizes the necessary evil of the state. So there is a clear there's a clear analogy there, which I found very interesting, just thinking about this whole thing earlier this week.
So it's all kind of this philosophy of like, there's something outside of yourself that you can't fix, and this is your panacea, is either the drugs or the state or something like that, right? So the state is almost like it's almost like drug abuse. It's state abuse, right? To be reliant on this external thing to set you straight, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I don't think it's an accident that so much of the moral degeneracy and the moral malaise that we see in our society results in greater state power, because it's kind of like the same thing. It's people becoming apathetic, people being fearful, people becoming weak, and outsourcing that inner struggle to an external agent, and whether that's a drug or a nefarious authoritarian regime, it serves the same purpose, which is the short-term relief. I don't have to think about that, so we'll let the drug deal with it, or we'll let the prime minister deal with it. Yeah, okay, I'm safe until next time, and then next time it's always worse.
Right, and then there's a pushing of responsibility away from yourself too. Like that's kind of a theme within this article. This anarchy isn't chaos. Is that all of these you show in this article, there's been other civilizations where there hasn't been a state. Like the U.S. state is a colossus. It is like, it's like, Mordor or something like that. There's just so much. The state is so big, the federal government, and it's probably the biggest bureaucracy in human history. And they don't do anything. People show up, they don't provide any goods, but you don't ever mess with them. Like the government always kind of wins in the United States. It's so big, whether it's in a criminal trial, IRS, rules and regulations. I mean, it's almost like an overlord level of power, but it's never like, which is really strange, because when this country started, there was this whole idea of self-governance and sovereignty, individual sovereignty. That was what it was about. It's not being ruled by the king. So it's weird that we've got a new king in this government, and it's the big daddy or big state or something, or whatever, big brother or something like that. Crazy. It's probably the same in the Australia, wouldn't you agree?
The big government. Yeah. I mean, it's enormous. The federal government here, not on the same scale as the US, but it is increasing, and it's getting worse.
I mean, and now it's like you couldn't talk about certain things during COVID, and now it's like you're never going to be able to criticize Jews or Israel. I think that's happening here in the States. So you see, it's actually, I mean, from some place that's on a whole different hemisphere, the dynamics and the phenomenon are very similar to me. It's very strange, like false flags and censorship. Like they're talking about censoring anybody. Like we're gonna have in the United States an anti-Semitism czar who's going to police people.
Like, we've got one of those. We've got one of those, except she's called a special envoy.
A special envoy. That's
same thing. Yeah. And it is the same across all the entire West, Western Europe, UK, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand. The program is the same. There are differences which are very minor and insignificant. Like I said, here we're looking at hate speech laws to protect the Jews. In the UK, they've got hate speech laws which protect Muslims. And people would say, well, completely different paradigm. It's not. It's exactly the same paradigm. They're just pulling on different levers to affect the same outcome.
Right. I mean, it quells debate, quells dialogue. Somebody else is going to police your thoughts. It's thought police. It's incredible. It's happening here. I'm surprised people in the States put up with it. But like, it goes into this theme of the state and kind of anarchy or less state or voluntarism. I mean, it's just, I never thought it would come to this. And I mean, here's what the thing is that some of the criticisms of Israel are valid. Like, this is a genocide. They are killing people in Gaza. Like, this is an obvious external objective truth. It's not like my opinion isn't that they're killing women and children. Like, I can see it.
We're well past that.
Yeah, way past that. So that's the whole thing is it's like, wow, this is a form of tyranny. So if the state becomes tyrannical, then where are we at? Like, the state is saying you can't even say that it's a genocide, or what other word? Can I say it's mass murder? Because it's definitely mass murder. Right? I mean, what's going on? Like, is that consistent with Jew hatred? If I'm critical of a state, of a government, like where are we at? Who's going to be the arbiter of that? Is it going to be a special envoy or an anti-Semitism czar? Because if that's the case, Americans are in real trouble. Like, you guys are in trouble too, I guess.
We're all boiling in the same pot. You guys have just slightly more protections than we do in terms of your First and Second Amendments. That's basically the only difference. But as I said, the program is it's the same across the West.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, are you at UK levels where they're like literally jailing people for what they say online yet? Are they?
No, that happened during COVID. We got there during COVID, and there were people were being locked up for organizing. The protest movement organizers got really, really harassed, and some of them got sent to jail. Then there was, police violence on the street with the tear gas and the rubber bullets and the beatings and the chokings. But we haven't reached UK levels yet. But I look at this and I see it's a clear path towards that, and it is just uncanny how similar the playbook is. It's just they're using a different minority, and that's why I keep saying I think it's irrelevant, just like it's irrelevant whether it was organic or staged.
Right.
Like we know who controls the immigration. We know that the multicultural experiment, we know where it comes from. And so whether or not that experiment then organically produces terror events, which they can latch onto and use as a cudgel to keep us compliant through fear, or whether it just provides a stage for them to fabricate events, doesn't matter. The result's the same.
Right. I mean, it's just going to ramp up. It's like turning the screws on the totalitarian regime. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, and so like how this relates back to the anarchy thing is, and look, you mentioned before that there are cultures, there are examples from history where societies have operated anarchically, and I list a few of them in my essay. You've got classical Athens, the early Islamic Caliphate, medieval Icelandic Commonwealth, the medieval Swiss cantons, colonial New England, 17th century Puritan societies. But most importantly, and within living memory of some people still alive today, pre-World War I United States, 1776 to 1913, which had notably a homogenous shared Christian moral culture. And by the way, in the course of my research, I identified that the homogenous shared religious culture, often Christian in the later examples, is common across all those examples of anarchic style states that I've listed. Community anchored civic and religious institutions, emphasis on virtue, self-reliance, local governance and civic responsibility. State and municipal governments handled most affairs, and a very limited federal bureaucracy. And the outcome was, a prosperous nation, strong social trust, widespread civic engagement, flourishing society with minimal central government. Now, the reason the multiculturalism argument is central to this is the common factor in all societies that have existed independently of a highly centralized federal style government like what we have in Australia and like what you have in the US now. It is a shared moral framework. And interestingly, when I was researching this, ChatGPT, despite its rigid progressive parameters, I even got it to admit, and I'll read verbatim what it admitted to me. Societies based on a unified worldview require fewer external controls. This is a delicate topic. There's the disclaimer. This is a delicate topic, but historically undeniable. The more cohesive the shared moral system, the less coercive the government needs to be. History shows this truth clearly. When moral norms are internalized, the state can shrink. When moral norms erode, the state grows. So diversity requires bureaucracy, but more importantly, bureaucracy requires diversity. Especially a bureaucracy that wishes to perpetuate itself and elevate and escalate its own power, such as we have in Australia, such as you have in the US, such as we have everywhere. And we see this encapsulated this week in Australia. The upshot of multiculturalism is a further entrenchment of state bureaucratic power. Bondi Beach, like I said, whether false flag or organic, the result is the same. And what we see emerging out of this is a very interesting talking point, which is being repeated by both sides of the political spectrum right now. Those who are calling for hate speech laws to protect the Jews, and those in the federal government who are trying to defend their recognition of the Palestinian state. And this is an important piece of sort of globalist Marxist newspeak that I want everyone to remember. And you've probably heard this if you've watched any of the coverage. This is an attack on all Australians.
Wow.
We're hearing this daily. We've been hearing it daily since Sunday, and it's really chilling when you can decode the newspeak, because what it really means is it means a couple of things, but it means it's the same thing Jacinda Ardern said after the Christchurch mosque shooting, except her tagline was a bit different, but it meant exactly the same thing. And she said, "They are us." So this is globalist multicultural code for apples are oranges, men are women, 2 + 2 = 5. There's no distinction. There's no delineation between, they're just fungible, interchangeable human units. Everyone is equally moral. Everyone is equally valuable. There is no difference, and out of that comes this kind of this heterogeneous miasma whereby people are so bamboozled with this ideology that they retreat into fear. And that's the other thing that statement, this is an attack on all Australians. It's meant to create fear, because it's not an attack on all Australians. I've said in my most recent essay, we can exist in harmony with our Jewish neighbours, but Australia was not built up and founded as a Jewish nation. It was a Christian nation, So when these politicians and the media say they are us, it's supremely disingenuous, because they are not us. And when we buy into this talking point, we're essentially surrendering our identity and saying, well, it's anyone who comes here and finds themselves a victim of anything, we have to wrap our arms around them, which is another direct quote from the Prime Minister, and just mouth these platitudes. They are us. This is an attack on all of us. No, it's not. It's not. And like I said earlier, the problem would not exist. It would not have happened if us was a meaningful word that we could apply to Australia. Because the fact is, there is no us in the same sentences as Australia, because it's been made into a multicultural society, the same as all Western countries have now. So you can't say us anymore, because if you say us, you're being a bigoted, racist, evil white nationalist, So you have to say they are us. We're all one, And that actually that bleeds into the conversation that Nick Fuentes was having with Piers Morgan last week around Holocaust guilt, and Josh Frydenberg, who's an ex MP in the Liberal Party here in Australia, which is like your Republican Party. He's Jewish, and he went on camera yesterday or the day before and gave the country a real harangue, in which he repeated this talking point, and I realized that what another thing they're saying when they say this is an attack on all of us is that white Christians are not doing enough. Right. Our self-flagellation is not yet sufficient. We've got to do more. We've got to protect all the minorities who live within our borders, and again, that strips us of our identity and our ability to say, no, you look, this is not our fight. Because
it's not all of us, right? So what happened at Bondi Beach was an attack by Muslims against Jews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
it's a foreign conflict that's been imported here, which has nothing to do with our roots as a Caucasian Christian country. And as Fuentes points out, you can't even say that. It's becoming more permissible to say that these days, for sure. But but in polite society, you still can't say the words, white Christian nation without being tarred with the white supremacist Nazi brush. And I think that point about Holocaust guilt that can never be let go of. It can never be, we can never put it down. And he made a really thing, regardless of what you think about Fuentes, and I've got a couple of things that I could say there. It's not the point. We have been browbeaten our entire lives in the West by this Holocaust cudgel, and it's like, hang on a minute, that was the Germans did that, but watching him on Piers Morgan, I realized, what, he's right. I've been walking around my whole life with this weird kind of niggling kind of thing that, the thing that makes you sort of genuflect before, before the relentlessly victimized Jewish people, this weird sort of nebulous guilt that we as white Christian Westerners carry around, that we somehow have to, and you see it personified at the macro level with the relationship between the US state and the state of Israel, but it filters down to all of us, and so this statement, this is an attack on all Australians, is just another manifestation of that we must guarantee the existence of Israel, we must protect Jews wherever they are. It's like, well, I think more and more people are getting to the point where it's like, look, I'm not advocating genocide or anything like that, but this isn't our fight. I'm a Christian person. My heritage, my forebears were Christian people. I'm not comfortable being attached to this ancient Middle Eastern blood feud.
Right. It's
So,
thousands of years old. It's over 1,000 years old. Jews and Arabs have been fighting forever. Even before the state of Israel, even before 1948. But it's incredible. It's really an issue here. It's interesting to hear you talk because these are the same issues. And I think Fuentes, whatever he says, he's an avatar for all those feelings that you just enunciated. I think that's what he is. He's the only one. He was the one saying it. Why are we paying this out? Why are we supporting the genocide? Why is Israel our number one ally? What is going on? And these people who are going against them are all taking a risk, whether it's Candace or Tucker or Fuentes and all these other people. But there's a whole new generation, like you mentioned. These young kids are like, yeah, this is not moral. This isn't right. And I don't know why I have this foisted on us, this multiculturalism or this guilt, or is this the right society here in the States? People have called me racist and all this other stuff. There's whole squads of people from India who've taken jobs of this whole college age generation. They can't get jobs. And these are people who are qualified. These are nepotistic kind of there's probably some kind of scam or payoff. I don't have evidence of all of it, but some of these people are not, they're elbowing out the natives. They're elbowing out the white kids and even of other ethnicities too. They're being elbowed out of a whole generation of jobs, and they're going to become like little Nick Fuentes. They already are. Actually,
they already are. Yeah, and he is simply the voice of a generation, and it's undeniable. And they will keep shouting it down as racist, but it's going to come to a head. And I think maybe they want it to come to a head because then they can say, look at all these Nazis. It's time for time to throw them all in the gulag.
That's what Tucker said, that these people are setting up a standard of confrontation and not of softening things, but creating the environment where they can persecute you, where they can call you a Nazi. Because if they call you and think you're a Nazi, then you're gone. And some of these guys who are Jewish have said some pretty racist stuff where anti-Semitism is in your DNA, leading Jews. And so that's facilitating racism and not kind of ironing out wrinkles and stuff like that. It's making people angry because they don't even want to even fight this whole thing, just like you said.
Yeah, well, that goes back to what I was saying. That we are taught that it's kind of in our DNA that white Christians, the Germans were white Christians, therefore,
supposedly,
and that's the other thing. Fuentes said, we've all been taught our whole lives that if you get too white and too Christian and too nationalistic, then we're going to have another Holocaust. And that is absolutely the subtext of everything that runs through the education system. And the Hollywood entertainment. I mean, how many Holocaust movies are there? I mean, they're great movies, but I think there's some programming going on there, and that we have to carry this guilt around with us. And people talk about multiculturalism, usually in the sense that we're getting a lot of people from the Middle East, we're getting a lot of people from, say, Africa or other places which are more obviously opposed to Christian societies. But I think it applies to the Jewish diaspora as well. And it's not to say that we haven't and we can't live in harmony, because I think that it has been domestically, it's been a fairly harmonious, neighborhood, so to speak. But when it's politicized like this, and with the problems that emerge around national loyalty with these diasporas, I think that the conversation becomes a bit more tricky, because it's quite obvious that most of the Jewish diaspora here, and probably in the States too, has a primary loyalty to Tel Aviv, not to the people of the countries in which they live.
I think that's the case. I think that.
I mean,
that's
I hate to sound.
That's what people are complaining about in the States. Yeah, they're more loyal to Israel than the U.S. Yeah.
And I'm sure. Look, I don't want to make a blanket statement. I'm sure that doesn't apply to every single individual. But I think, generally speaking, that's what we see. It's certainly what we see if we open up X and see who's got an Israeli flag on their profile, or it's what we hear in the discourse. So yeah,
but this is happening. This whole thing, this anarchy, the growth of the state is because of these conflicts, and it's incredible. Like even there, I would say even early Australia could probably be like a homogeneous, smaller state in a land of prosperity at one point. That may not be the case today.
No, well, it was, and I'm not an Australian history expert, but it was, I think, much more like the early United States, which we spoke about before. There was very limited federal government. I'm not even sure when Australia was federated, but it just started out as colonies, Right. So again, much like the United States. And like I said, diversity requires bureaucracy, but I think more importantly, bureaucracy requires diversity to sustain and perpetuate itself, and that's exactly what we're seeing. So I know people who have gone so far as to say, well, they should go home. I don't think that's feasible. It's not something we're going to see without potentially making everything a lot worse. And it's not really humane. There are people who live here as Australians and are basically as Australian as anyone else. But I think at some point you have to say no more. No more.
What kind of civilization do you want? What kind of culture? It's not a racial issue. It's like, well, what do you want? Do you want peace? Do you want to have somebody you bring in who's a rapist or a murderer, or do you want people running around the streets with machetes? Because without those questions or answering those questions, you're going into a troubled thing. It's not a matter of race. It's a matter of culture. And who's going to live off the state? Like here in the States, they brought in people from Somalia and they just stole everything. They stole billions and billions of dollars. Here in the States, actually, it's been so bad that the third world that they brought in has stolen trillions of dollars. And it's through state issues, NGOs, and a lot of our debt is due to people offshoring billions. You can imagine the amount of money that's offshored from Indians or Mexicans sent back home that could be just patriated in the United States is in the hundreds of billions. And nobody's talking about it. They don't want to be called a racist. The real issue is what kind of culture and civilization you're going to build. And that's the same thing in Australia.
Yeah.
Because we're being looted. We don't even have the roads fixed up in LA. It's devolving. Civilizations are not static either. Cultures are not static. And that's what people have to realize. That's what's at issue. Is do you want to have a stable, functioning culture or not? Because if people are looting it blind, your kids aren't going to get health care. You're not going to have schools. That's incredible. You're going to, the dollar's going to cheapen that because they have to print more money because it's being stolen. It's incredible. The American people have been fleeced royally, and it's not even being discussed in the mass media. So it's intentional. So I think, I don't know what's happening in Australia, but these are huge questions. So if the state is facilitating this fleecing and stealing from the body politic, why do you have it? What's the justification for a big bureaucracy if they're just facilitating theft? At least in the United States, it's off the charts. There's no justification.
It's not just it's a means. It's a means to. The means is the end.
Right. It means the end. Itself. It means to the end of our civilization. And you listed off these civilizations in your article, and some of those didn't make it. Right. Classical Athens exploded in this cultural greatness, and then devolved. Iceland still seems to be there. Swiss kind of in its own things, but Colonial New England the Puritan societies are all gone, pretty much.
Yeah.
Maybe New England still exists. And pre-World War United States is.
Well, part of that's technological, isn't it? Part of it's technological and inevitable. But maybe the New England Puritan societies couldn't outlast the technological changes which came along. But you saw America sort of reinvent itself in the pre-World War One period, and like we all know what happened in 1913, don't we? I mean, that's a whole other conversation for a whole other podcast. But look, I agree with you. It's not racial. It's not racial at all. It's completely cultural, and we can say cultural. I like that word, but culture really comes from your moral foundation, doesn't it?
Sure does. Yeah.
Which comes from your faith, from the way you conceive goodness. And
I'll tell you something, JJ. One of the things that people don't get is that their state and their bureaucracy and everything are really a secularized version of their faith and their theology. So concepts of freedom, they don't exist in Islam. They don't. But the notion of freedom from sin and error is a very current theme within Christianity. So you won't see certain of those themes reflected in Islamic societies because they're not emphasized by Muhammad.
Yeah,
whereas like the conquest of sin. So Jewish society is very different too. It's very rules oriented, and it's secular externalization. It's very different than Christianity. So the whole Judeo-Christian concept is it's facile. It's
that was a fabrication. Yeah. Fabrication. And it's amazing how often you hear that little talking point to Judeo-Christian. I believed it for most of my life.
Yeah, it's recent.
Yeah. It's post World War II.
Sure is.
Yeah, and this is an important point, actually, on the race versus culture thing. Because, for instance, there's a lot of Africans who are deeply Christian. So and I actually have a dinner that I go to monthly with some guys from my church. We've got a chap from the Congo. A devout man who believes and conducts himself in life, in the same manner that I try to. So it absolutely has nothing to do with race, and it just so happens that most people who try to follow a Christian way of life are, Caucasian. But it's what kind of society do you want? And it comes down to simply asking that question. And if you answer it honestly, then you arrive at a place where you're not talking about race at all. You're talking about the kind of people and the kind of beliefs that you want to constitute your society. And it's very simple, but of course it gets obfuscated by people who want to keep us divided for their own gain.
Yeah, no question. They always make it about race. I mean, some of these civilizations are not going to function. Like a lot of these states on the Western world are at the edge of civil war. Like whether it's the UK or France, or people are talking about it. Germany's low-level civil war. There's people getting run over.
Yeah.
So their culture and civilization is at its nadir. Like, wow. And they're talking about this fake war against Russia. I mean, it's a real war, but there's no reason they should be fighting Russia. It's a complete distraction. Yeah. Well, I got a question for you, JJ. What's the take? What's your take? And what's the Australians' take on the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Has it resonated down there? What's your impression?
It's I haven't talked to a whole lot of people here about it, but my take is that the official story stinks to high heaven. I mean, God, the bouncing bullet theory, really? Again, like the magic bullet?
Yeah.
Are we like, how can we sit through 60 years of this Kennedy thing and then go back to the magic bullet straight away? I was like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, my position is that the the war that has erupted in the MAGA movement now, the Tim Pool, Candace Owens thing. In fact, you know what? I was working on an essay about that whole thing when the shooting happened, and then I had to put that aside for a bit. But I have been thinking about this, and it's the official story is bunk. I decided immediately after it happened that Robinson was most likely just a stooge. I think if you take a sample of the most sort of popular so-called conspiracy theories going around about Charlie Kirk, I'd probably land somewhere in the dead center of that. Yeah.
So the kind of Candace Owens research is getting down there to Australia, and people or at least
absolutely, yeah. And interestingly, yeah, the divide seems to be along those who want to cling on to this idea that Trump is going to save us, and those who several months ago gave up on Trump. That's where the divide sits, and you can see that reflected in the podcast ecosystem in the States, where people like Tim Pool, who are now kind of peripheral friends of the president, they want to hold on to that status, so it's like, well, we've got to win the midterms, we got to stop causing problems, if we're divided, the house will fall. And so you got those people who want to believe in the Trump fairy tale, even though those of us who are awake know that it's over and he's just another useless blimmin' politician who isn't going to do jack. And then on the other side, you've got those of us who are like, let the house fall, let the midterms. Who cares? There's no political solution. That's again, that goes back to the transformative journey that I outlined at the start of our conversation today. Once you reach that point where you're like, there's no political solution, you either give up and roll over and die, or lose yourself in hedonism, which is not a good plan, or you say, well, there has to be a God, and then you just got to lean into your faith at that point. So I look at that and I'm like, I'm definitely in the Candace camp on this one. I mean, yeah, she might be going a little bit crazy on a few things, but there's so much about the Kirk thing that doesn't add up. It's like, well, why would you possibly just sort of sit quietly in the corner and nod your head and say, yes, trust Kash Patel, trust Donald Trump, after everything we've seen, after that? And these are the same people who made a career out of questioning everything the government said. And now, because they're friends with the president, it's like, no, everything's fine. Nothing to see here. No, get the hell out of here.
Right. I mean, I think you're right. I think it's incredible. Just incredible shift here in the United States. Like I've used the term tectonic, like,
yeah,
people are done. Like it's shifted. Like you would never, and the other people, like they're exposing themselves by talk, like Tim Pool, by just talking, like, wow. You are in direct contravention with, like, just like you said, with what you said before Trump got in. We're going to expose Epstein. It's a fake expose. It's totally fake, and he knows it. They paid out, they paid out $800 million to victims. So Kash Patel is directly, like, making statements in contravention of these settlements to the victims. I have no evidence of victims. Well, you're playing dumb, man. So
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, it's bad. It's just, yeah. And I think really what happened, one of the things that's covered up by the so-called Christian right is that I think all the Republican senators voted to not release the Epstein files.
Yeah, right.
Like they literally were on board. No way. It's a national security. Why is it a national security? It's a national insecurity, actually, by not bringing those to light. What the heck is going on? Like if there's nothing there, you should just let it fly. That's the whole thing about Candace too. If she's just a kook, fringe figure, you should just let her talk all she wants. That's not what they're saying. That's why they're branding her crazy, is because she's on to something. She's got, God bless her, but like she skimmed over the whole Cirque stuff. way too fast. Like that's how these things get okayed, these hits.
Yeah.
And they're all
Yeah.
international, just like JFK, because
Yeah.
they bring people in from foreign countries who don't care. They won't hesitate to off somebody because they're not from that country. So JFK had guys from the south of France, supposedly, and Cuba, because they don't care. So of course they ship them in planes or whatever. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, her investigation. I think that actually the 30-06 and everything, the gun is fake. I think that the evidence shows he wasn't hit with a bullet. Something else, some other high-tech weaponry, some energy weaponry. I'm not even saying electrocution.
Yeah.
He does not show any signs of. There's no blood spray. He's literally. I mean, you couldn't have like. I feel sorry for him, but there's like you couldn't ask for a better backdrop. There's a white sheet behind him. So where is the spatter? Just one drop, and there isn't. But there's blood all over. I mean, something No, it's really bad. They better. I mean, this poor guy who's their patsy or the stooge or whatever. He better not end up like Oswald. That's how they'll tie up the loose ends. Is off him, man, Tyler Robinson.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like look, I got to the point with all that so early on there. Well, I was just like, I tuned out. It's like, okay, I've seen enough. This is just absurd, absolutely absurd. And another thing, as soon as they in any given situation, just look at who they're calling crazy, and that's probably who's closest to the truth, And of course, right now that's Candace. Yeah. And I'm not saying she's hitting it out of the park on every swing, but at least she's asking the questions. Damn it!
Yeah, she's a centralized figure. I mean, the whole TPUSA is sketchy as heck. I mean, they're all like these fake kind of pseudo big church Christians, and they just are smiling while they lie. It's off the charts. They're provable liars from the pulpit. Like, it's
well, they've been infiltrated, right?
Yeah,
And I wrote about this in another recent essay. What was it called? The Real Killer of Charlie Kirk. I think what's happened there, and this assumes that Kirk is really dead. I mean, I know there's some conspiracy theories, if we can still call it that, which is a stupid phrase, but there are some theories.
You wrote this like 1 week after his death too, right?
Yeah. If we assume he is really dead, which I think he probably is. I mean, I've heard fairly compelling arguments to the contrary, but let's just leave that aside for the moment. Assuming he's really dead, I think in that scenario, what happened was he was getting too based. He was waking up too much because he was still a young guy, and he was moving away. He was moving away from the whole Judeo-Christian thing. He was probably starting to see some of the rot in the administration that he helped install. He was probably becoming more of a problem to them than a help, So my feeling is what they've done is they've extracted everything they could from him and now martyrized him. So everybody, they throw this big, that funeral they had for him, that stadium full of people and the fireworks and the singing and all, they turn it into like a state, they turn it into a Trump rally basically. And so what they do is they extract all of that energy from the movement and channel it back into the system, into the machine. And so that they take what was ostensibly from the outside looking in, and I have no reason to assume it wasn't a Christian, a genuine grassroots Christian movement, and they co-opt it and bastardize that energy and turn it into secular energy. They assassinate the figurehead and then subsume his followers back into the system, because what Turning Point was initially, for all intents and purposes, was sort of a splintering off from the system, like an awakening Christian movement, which was separating itself away from the machine. Soon as Kirk is taken out of the picture, he's turned into a martyr and held up. And this is an old play as well. The system turns its enemies into martyrs in order to keep the followers of that problematic person loyal to the system.
Right. Exactly.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, it's really dark. It's very well said. I think Candace even said that, like, once they named a street after you, or there's a assassination day, that the system killed you, the machine killed you.
Exactly. That's
what happens here. Whether it's JFK, MLK, any of those people, like, it's incredible. Like, he really rubbed people the wrong way. He was getting too independent for his own good. It's the same thing that they say in the beginning of the Parallax View, which is about like a assassination, manufacturing assassinations. But like the senator's like, some people say I'm too independent for my own good, and then he dies. It's like Charlie Kirk got independent. That was the future of the right wing, by the way.
Yeah,
like
Jesus was the future of the right, and that again to the central point of our entire discussion today. People were breaking through the glass ceiling.
Yeah,
they were saying, hey, the answer isn't Trump, it's Christ, and they're like, we got to do something about this. So take Kirk out of the picture.
Candace leaves.
Yes, and then resecularize the base. Get them back under that glass ceiling. It's like, no, Jesus. It's
very spiritual. It's very spiritual. It's incredible. Like the cover up is just off the charts. Like,
oh man, and we're never going to know either. We're never going to know. This is the new JFK. And I just look at. I can't even begin to express the level of disdain I have. Like, man, I used to watch Tim Pool's show every day. I didn't always agree with him, but I thought, this is pretty good. Kind of keeps me in touch with what's going on. I can't watch him anymore. I tuned in to look at his embarrassing meltdown the other week over the whole Candace thing. But I can't take these people seriously anymore. When it's just like, because they now have access to the White House, or that we've had Kash Patel on the show. We think he's pretty legitimate and he's not going to get everything right. But it's like, no, you've become part of the machine, dude. Not interested. I'm not.
Yeah, really well said. He wasn't always part of that, though. That's the whole thing. He wasn't.
And it's crazy. Like, I started watching Paul back in 2017, 2018, when he was just a dude he was just, a kind of a lefty skater dude in his bedroom, like doing news commentary. And I watched him sort of become, move to the right and become a MAGA guy. And everything sort of seemed to be going all right up until Trump got reelected last year. And now it's like, boom, part of the machine suddenly. It's just, it's incredible to watch that transformation happen, and to say nothing of the obvious Israeli influence on that show, which
Well,
Trump,
but it's interesting to watch how Trump can use this whole ballroom. I call it like the ballroom concept, or the Mar-a-Lago effect, where he invites people to his, very ornate meetings, and that's how they get turned. Whether something happens after those shows, or they've got blackmail, or I don't even know. But it's like, if you end up with Trump's parties and stuff, and I think that's why he's building that $300 million ballroom adjacent to the White House, so he can. And maybe that's just the way the system or the machine really works, is you get people involved in these guys' personal lives, and they'll just do anything for you to get that access, to go to those parties, to be around celebrities or whatever, whether it's on the left or the right.
Yeah. Well, we know the machine works like that. What has surprised me, and I've repudiated myself for my earlier naive endorsements of Trump, especially after Butler, Pennsylvania. But my question now is, was he turned like Tim Pool and so many others obviously have been, or was he always part of the plan? Was he always just, is their planning so effective and sort of far seeing that back in 2015, they could already see this. I don't know, but
I think they're all blackmailed all the way back to Roy Cohn, and that was his mentor, and so you see him as somebody in the wings, which they could possibly, and they're only going to promote somebody who they have their tendrils. The machine is part of the machine, whether it's Bill Clinton, whether it's Bush Jr. or Obama. Obama's like, he's a bathhouse marauder, dude. That guy's big. We know he hangs out. He bangs dudes. Like, so that he's got him, and we know Bill Clinton always was a sexual marauder too, and Trump was too back in the day. He doesn't do drugs supposedly, but they probably had. I mean, I've heard stories about eyes wide shut level parties with that guy. Or like orgying and that kind of thing. So in the city, in Manhattan. In New York City, in Manhattan.
Yeah, so. or Long Island, as the case may be. I watched that movie again recently.
Yeah.
It was time.
Still relevant. It's still relevant.
Yeah.
You want to talk about a machine? Think about like these guys doing rituals where they know these people are celebrities or whatever, and they're bringing in these prostitutes, and that's just how it's self-perpetuation. You know what I mean? Like that's how it's done. Whether it's
and it's all intel ops.
Yeah, it's all.
And Epstein, like it. Yeah, I mean, we know that's how we know that's like. This is where I've gotten to with all of this. It's like, everything is fake, everything is gay, it's, and there's no political solution. And, some people might call that a cop-out. There are plenty of people who are going to call it extremist. But for me, it's just like, no, I've had enough. I'm not interested anymore. And actually, life gets a whole lot more simple when you just say, hey, man, I'm turning this over to God. And actually, your health gets better too, because you stop it. You just stop worrying so much. It's like, it's all a big show, It's all.
Weren't we told that though? Weren't we told to be warned about these people and wolves in sheep's clothing? And
But again, the further people drift from Scripture, the easier it is to bamboozle them. So.
That's one of the interesting things about Christianity. For people who don't know Christianity, their impression of it is maybe like, oh, it's a bunch of rules based, or it's anti-Semitic, or it's a fantasy land, new agey. Christ is a new ager. He lays it out like, this is terrible. They hate me. They're going to hate you. Watch out for wolves in sheep's clothing. Be careful of this. The outcomes aren't great. Like, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's not a promise of some happy, willy-nilly state of mind. Like, you're going to be persecuted.
No, it's not, man. And I still haven't read the whole Bible, but I'll get there eventually. But and the cool thing about Jesus is, he was the ultimate he was the ultimate contrarian in many ways. He was the ultimate rebel.
Going into the temple, calling everybody corrupt, woe to you, and then overturning the money changers. Like, wow.
Yeah. He fashioned himself a whip and turfed them out. Actually, another thing that just came to mind, just circling back to the topic of anarchy, voluntarism, and a decentralized societal organization. What I found is when you do lean into your faith and you do engage with your church, what naturally happens is you take on more responsibility. It's just, because when I went back to church a couple of years ago, after sort of 20 years as a atheist / agnostic, I saw everyone getting involved in parish life and, doing the volunteer stuff and contributing to the church. And I thought, that's not for me. That's too much work. That'll never be me. 2 years later, I'd just been asked to join our parish council. And, it was right at the time that I was formulating the essay we've just been discussing, which I just thought was, the opportunity to get involved even at a very low level, it's parish council. It's just the lowest level of politics there is, really. But that was sort of dropped in my lap right around the time I was having these illuminations, these revelations, and so the learning is there that when you do lean into your faith, you find yourself taking on responsibility for your community, even if it's just something small. Like, I'll sit on the parish council. I will help the church to govern itself. I'll help my congregation and my parish to govern itself, because that's something I can do. And then through that, you find other ways to get involved, and that's just the lowest level. So what I'm seeing there is that if everyone leaned back into faith, they would naturally become more responsible, and the more responsible each individual becomes, and the more involved each individual gets at the local level, the less need you have for that centralized authority.
Amen. I can't think of a better way to end up right there.
Right on.
That's a great statement. Where can people find your work, JJ?
JJ, what is it? Yeah, Substack.com/J.
It's JJ Dawson.
JJ. I'm looking on the browser here, but it's giving me JJ Dawson.substack.com. That's got to be it, surely.
I'll put a link there so people can go and
check
sign
the
up.
link in the show notes.
Yeah. I'll put the link in the show notes. Anything you'd like to add? I mean, I feel like that was a great way to finish it up.
No, that was a great chat,
Yeah.
and I think we covered everything. But yeah, jump onto the Substack.
It does play off into each other. The notion of voluntarism, anarchy, the state, these assassinations, this thing going wrong. I mean, it's Charlie walked up against the machine, and the machine is going to win. It seems like it's going to win again. Like, maybe the only solution is the return of Christ. I don't know, but the perpetuation of this machine that assassinates the guys who step out of line, independent, coming from Christ to the present, hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped. I don't know. It's a phenomenon. I don't know the answer to it. So
yeah, I don't know either, man. But I think we've all got to get comfortable with not knowing, and that again is sort of the essence of our faith. And
there's so many people lying about Kirk. They're on board with the machine. There's so many people calling Candace evil. I mean, it's just off the charts. It's not even applicable to her. Like, she's not coming from that place of, like, she wants to know. She had a personal relationship with Charlie Kirk. She wants to know what happened. If she gets to the answers, she's going to come up with concepts that we talked about.
She's in the crosshairs. So is Fuentes. So a lot of people. we're going to see a lot more. Things are going to get crazy.
I've done that. I've talked about the age of assassination. Fuentes. Somebody tried to kill Fuentes. They killed 4 people. They didn't kill him. And there's just other people, craziness going on out there. So everybody stays safe.
Back on the menu. Assassination is back on the menu. Yeah.
All right. Till next time, JJ. Great to talk with you again. People, check out his work. Fantastic writer, and also a great guest. Thanks so much for sharing your work with everybody. So, blessings to you, and Merry Christmas, and happy holidays to everybody.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. It's great to be back here with William. Check out jjdawson.substack.com. Merry Christmas, and I hope to be back soon, William, and chat with you in 2026.
Anytime, yeah. Great. Thanks, JJ. Stay there.